right. You are live on the Twitch, sir.
Sweet. All right, let's get this rolling then. Hello and welcome everybody. Hello, TogetherCon 2022. It's good to see everybody who's actually here in the chat still. Oh man, I actually have to do work now. Okay, well, I didn't comb my hair for nothing. Alrighty then. Welcome, as I said, to Pardon the Pause Live. Is this thing on? Can everybody hear me okay? Just checking. That's not a joke. That's an actual
Yes,
question.
we can hear you. Everything's good.
Okay, sweet. All right, good. All right. Okay, so as I said, welcome to everybody. A very special edition of Pardon the Pause, and we're gonna go ahead and start off with some introductions. So, hello everybody. This is Solidus. You can find me on Twitch.tv under Solidus_PTP. Oftentimes, I'll refer to Solid because a lot of folks have apparently never played Metal Gear Solid 2. Who knew? There we are. But let's go ahead and talk about what the show was and what this panel is going to be about. It's essentially a live version of the podcast I used to do with friends. And what we would do is as we talk all things geek, from the things we're excited for, latest news and upcoming things, whether it was comic books, anime, manga, whatever it is, we wanted to talk about it. However, we also talked about the bad things. We specifically were talking about things from the latest scandals to the latest problems, calling out bullshit, especially from the terms of exploitative monetization schemes, exploitative tactics used by various publishers and developers, so on and so forth. And as the slide says, with no fear. We call these things out from a pro consumer, pro customer perspective. No fanboying or fangirling or fan idiocy is probably the most universal term can be applied. So if you have problems where you have connected your purchasing of a product to your identity to the point where someone giving criticism of it is going to turn you into a rage and may turn you into an internet troll, this might not be the program for you. The format of the show is derived from Pardon the Interruption. It is broadcast on ESPN, hosted by Michael Wilbon and Tony Kornheiser. Essentially, what we're doing is going through a couple of topics. Timers going to be set up for me to try to keep me from motor mouthing and long winding my ass into oblivion, so we can keep the show flowing. And when everything's said and done, hopefully we'll be able to come back and chat and things like that. So I really won't be looking too much at the Discord text chat until we get to that phase of the panel. So this is a lot of listening to a random knucklehead over the internet ramble on and rant on and on, which might be entertaining or just make you feel better about yourself. We're going to find out. Okay, so on this episode, we have a lot of fun topics. We're going to be discussing Bungie taking on YouTube, Amazon improving comicsology, and we also talk about the passing of a legend. Well, we begin today's episode with the latest news that E3 2022 has been fully canceled in all capacities. Previously, back in January 2022, the ESA, the body that runs E3, also known as the Electronic Entertainment Expo, announced the cancellation of the in-person E3 this year for 2022, which typically takes place in May. They blamed it on the rise of Omicron, and the E3 has itself had a rough history with the pandemic, from 2022 fully canceling the event, 2021 being more of a digital event, and now we talk about this year. However, many people on Twitter, especially those journalists who were actually asking from people behind the scenes, saying that this was not actually the case, bringing up doubts that the Omicron was at fault and just that ESA simply did not have anything going for it. Now the question becomes, what is the fate of E3? Is it E3 finally dead? For me personally, I really couldn't give two shits because I basically have been done with E3 for a very long time. The reason why I've been done with E3 for a very long time is because of the fact that it is just so fucking full of bullshit. And it has been full of bullshit in ways that probably a lot of us have not been keeping up with unless you're actually following video game news. And even when it comes to the bullshit outside of it, we have some problems with ESA themselves. Like, for example, I believe it was 2018 or 2019, we had the issue where they had leaked information of people who were attending E3. So you had journalists' personal info being out there onto the internet due to sloppy security measures by the ESA. Now, when I talk about bullshit, I'm basically talking about the fact that E3 has become a part of the video game hype machine that has done nothing really good or favorable for anybody, to be honest, with the exception of maybe corporate executives. Um, the hype machine, as we know, has basically contributed to everything from pre-order culture, and when it comes to what we've been seeing in recent years, where games are basically shit when they first get released, even though you're charging more and more for them, you need to pay more and more for bigger editions, which has all the DLC and all the stuff like at the beginning and for first day downloads, first day patches. It's really just become insane for anything to be promoting, anything to be hyping, anything anymore. It's really fucking ridiculous. And probably one of the bigger things that helped contribute to that ridiculousness is just the outright lies. Rainbow Six Siege, Watch Dogs, even Killzone 2 way back when. So many of these have been games where they have publishers especially, have been offering up views or vertical slices of what games are, and then when they come out, they look nothing like it. Or there's so much about it that's missing. And it's really become just a horrible, horrible joke to the point where what exactly is the purpose of E3 anymore? It's fucking bullshit. It's but it is. That's why I'm very jaded about it. The biggest example I can give to why E3 needs to go, or at least it needs to go in the form that it is Anthem. For those unaware, Anthem was published by Electronic Arts, aka EA, and developed by BioWare, the guys behind, the people behind Dragon Age, Mass Effect, so on and so forth. It was a wreck when it came out. It was hot garbage in so many ways. But the kicker, or the kicker that's relevant to this particular topic, comes from the expose written by Jason Schreier about what happened behind the scenes. He wrote one for Mass Effect Andromeda, and now we had one for Anthem. And the revelation that is the most relevant here is the fact that when they first showed off gameplay at E3, I think it was like 2017 or something like that, the gameplay they showed was news to the development team itself. You have people actually making the fucking game, and some of them were like, oh, that's the game we're making. When your own development team is being introduced to the game for the very first fucking time at an event that's being broadcast to the public, internationally to the public, you are fucking up. And this event is full of shit in and of itself. So what value does E3 actually genuinely have? And that's not even going to the actual logistics where basically I think E3 is probably going to die anyway because fucking developers and publishers have already figured out that instead of paying money to the ESA to have booths and to do stuff, why don't we just open up our own Twitch channels? Why don't we just put up stuff on our own YouTube channels? Why do we need to go to E3? Developers and publishers have been having these exorbitant, stupid ass events, like brought announcing games and introducing games to press already. Why do that and then pay more money to ESA? So it's like the relevance and the need for E3 is already in huge question, in my opinion. It is really, really telling that they had to go and talk about COVID and the latest Omicron variant in order to say they shut down. When it's like, it doesn't. It's not that hard to pull off a digital event. You can have a digital event and have nobody show up whatsoever. You know what I mean? So you can still be safe and have an E3, but yet they didn't. I think that's a big sign that a lot of companies have just figured out that's like no. But even then, the hype train needs to stop. It needs to stop. People are paying money and they're getting products that do not match what they're paying for. And the prices keep going up and they've been going up. Why the hell are we still doing this shit? Okay. It's fucking over. It's done. It needs to end. So that way people can actually, kind of feel like a chance to save the cash. Okay, next topic. Bungie, developers of Halo, or at least the original developers of Halo, and now the developers of Destiny 1 and 2, had a bit of a problem coming in the end of March. Essentially, various members of the Destiny 2 community have been reporting to Bungie that they were getting flagged for their content on YouTube. And the flaggings were also in violation of Bungie's own created YouTube creator policies that they had implemented. The investigation kicked in, found out that yes, there were fraudulent flags being done. The method of which was hilarious at best, but not really hilarious for the content creators, and it has resulted in Bungie filing a massive lawsuit again, trying to seek out who these people are. So, who's the bad guy in this story? In case you're wondering, it's YouTube. Let's go into the story about what actually happened. So, it appears that what happened was a couple of content creators got hit by Bungie with the copyright claims. This was actual Bungie going after them for violation of their policy. Um, Now, the problem comes in is that apparently these people who got their copyright strikes against them decided that they were going to falsely report some other creators that they were in violation of copyright. They did this by creating a similar looking Gmail account to a third party company that Bungie uses to go and execute these copyright strikes and the DMCA notifications via the YouTube system. And so apparently YouTube's DMCA system is so bad that they never actually checked that this email is legitimate or not, and went ahead and hit them with the copyright strikes and the flags on various Bungie content creators, even though they were following the rules. So Bungie was notified. There's a whole big mess. Bungie looked really, really bad. And so Bungie themselves went to YouTube and say, "Hey, hang on a second. These flags were not committed. Were not done by us. Please take them back, shut it down, roll things back." YouTube proceeded to do so, but YouTube never revealed the actual emails or the actual people tied to those emails that were giving the false flags. Since then, Bungie filed a lawsuit to go after Google to get that information, and then was basically very critical of YouTube's DMCA policy for being complete garbage that someone can actually just get away with this. It's like, oh hell yeah, we're gonna. You could just make a fake email and just go right on ahead and just flag somebody because that's totally doable. YouTube's DMCA system is a fucking farce, and it has been so for a very long time. This is like case number 3,297 of bullshit, terrible flaggings that have been happening. Because one hilariously constant theme was Bungie's own videos were getting flagged too. Yeah. The content owners' own videos are getting flagged for violating copyright of their own content. That's what's going on and was reported way back when this whole shit first started. And you had various content creators, for example, Angry Joe got hit with a flag over 4 seconds of audio. Um, even though the site went through a very shitty scandal because of like apparently how shitty it was run. Um, Channel Awesome was also had a series of videos talking about, hey, where's the fair use? Because even with issues involving copyright content, it's like sometimes the videos are getting flagged would be qualifying under the fair use law. So this is just another example of how YouTube is utterly incompetent, and even content owners were having trouble. Bungie stated that they were having problems getting in touch and getting actual responses from YouTube. This is a fucking billion-dollar company. When I say billion-dollar company, I'm talking about maybe not YouTube itself, but YouTube is tied to Google. Google owns YouTube. How the fuck are you this fucking incompetent? How the shit? Like you are trying so hard to avoid lawsuits with other companies because that's where this all comes from is trying to avoid getting into a lawsuit battle with various companies who are the owners of some content. It's going to be a show popping up on YouTube. You are so scared of that, but yet you can't even do due process and due diligence and create an actual system that actually works viably. Like this is the kind of shit that some indie person on a random ass website has problems with, who don't have money, and yet this is like, wow, really, really, it's really tragic, but how bad these can go like that. Okay, so moving on. The Halo Infinite game has basically, or I should say, the Halo series has been one of the most illustrious first-person shooters of all time. And the latest entry, Halo Infinite, has been actually highly praised by its multiplayer suite, and even the way it's set up its sales. For you can essentially purchase for free the multiplayer suite and play the Halo multiplayer while paying basic price for the campaign. So we have a separation of product, which is kind of nice. I myself was able to participate and enjoy the Halo beta, but which actually felt really good. It felt like traditional classic Halo. I was like, the only difference, of course, is I was playing on mouse and keyboard, which I'm used to. I'm used to playing on Xbox controller. But that aside, the problem has grown for Halo Infinite in that the player count has severely dropped. Some estimates say 95% drop in player base. Why is that? How is that happening? Well, for my part, what I would say is that one of the bigger problems when it comes to Halo Infinite is the clear fact that its season pass system is fucking garbage. It is horrendous. It's horrendous in the sense that it is such a fucking grind. Can we stop with games trying to make playing your game as like a third or second job? Like, please? Okay. The grind has been so bad where in terms of winning XP while playing the game, the specific challenges that had to get really specific, and the amount of XP in order to level up is utterly atrocious. It's long, it's winning, and then of course you have XP boosters. XP boosters that, by the way, run on real time, not game time. So while you're sitting in a lobby waiting to get into a match, the timer is going. Oh, but they charge you money for that. Oh, funny how that works. So we have two problems. Number one is the need for that games seem to have to make you want to basically like work a third job just to play their game in order to get the stuff that's out there. And second, we have the issue concerning um, creating a problem and then selling you the solution. The problem being grind takes a long time. Solution: oh look, here's these boosters that we will charge you money for. How convenient. And then finally, on top of not only the issue when it comes to being a third job, but also it's like the abuse of FOMO, fear of missing out. Because many times these cosmetics are in place with these season passes, you now get them back. Not too many games are very generous or when it comes to their content and their cosmetics like that. So if you don't get and you don't put in hours upon hours upon hours to grind and get these skins or get these colors or something like that for your customization. You miss out. You can't get them, or you have to wait for some rotation in the store, which is like the prices are like way too like insane for what you're paying for. Things of that nature. These are all things that contribute to some really shadiness, and it really does feel like your time is not valued whatsoever. Even though it's like you pay money for this stuff. Like, yes, the multiplayer is free to play, but still, time a person's time has value as well. And it's like, why is it that 343 and Microsoft are unwilling to respect it in this case? Now, they're not the only ones. Other games have also battle passes that can be really shitty when it comes to it. Like, for example, many, or maybe not the battle passes, but certain functions within the game can be shitty. Like, for example, Assassin's Creed by Ubisoft. Many times those games themselves have experience boosters, which again helps to alleviate an issue of long running grind for XP to level up. I believe Assassin's Creed Odyssey was one of them. Was a big one where like essentially unless you did all the side quests, you would be under leveled unless you had XP boosters, which were purchasable or they were sold or you found them in fucking like pixie roll boxes. It's just utterly absurd. Halo should be better. It deserves to be better. The gameplay is actually pretty damn good, and it truly does feel like back in the day and feel like a return to like the classic roots of Halo. Why then ruin it with a like monetization scheme that just drags? And on top of that, the cosmetics, like for example, colors for your armor, they are not really well designed and they don't have much customization. So a third job work or second or third job playing Halo, and then what do you get for it? May 20th, 2021, the anime and manga world was hit with a blow by finding out that the May 6th passing of Kentaro Miura. Miura was a manga creator and artist who is best known for his work on Berserk, the long running dark fantasy series that has been going on since 1989 and continues on now. However, it never finished. He has not finished it, and yet he is gone. He's 54 years old. What is the fate of Berserk now? To be honest, this is one of those times where I really wish I knew more about the Japanese manga industry and how they do things. And of course, there's a question, of course, of how Miura himself handled things. Berserk has become quite a influential and very very big piece of art and writing. From one thing, we have Miura's art style, which is extremely detailed. So detailed, in fact, that there are people who do still feel that the manga is unadaptable. You can create, which is funny because there's already been like two attempts at an anime, three if we consider the trilogy of Golden Age movies, based on the Golden Age arc from within the story. Um, but the art is so detailed, everyone says like it's just not possible because if you do, you're spending how much money and how many hours just drawing and trying to copy the amount of detail that Miura puts into his artwork. But then also we talk about the long-lasting story of Berserk itself. When you combine these two elements together, according to Wikipedia, this manga has sold like something like 57 million or something like that in copies, and it's essentially become one of, if not the most popular and most sold mangas of all time. The problem, of course, is as I said, is that it's not over yet. Back, I believe, it was early this year or late 2021. Berserk chapter 364 released, and it was confirmed by his team of assistants that this was the last manuscript that he worked on before passing. Now, the thing that's actually kind of interesting about it is becomes the question of do we end it now or should it be ended now as, hey, look, whatever you do from this point forward, there is no guarantee that it is Miura's vision. Did he even have notes? Did he even write anything down? The story of Berserk feels like it's so far into the future, or I should say, there's so much more stuff that has to happen for it to be a nice, smooth ending that it's like, how do you go from here? How many steps? And even then, The question is, do you adhere to Miura's style? Because there's various elements within Berserk that do not follow what one would argue as traditional tropes of fantasy, even dark fantasy. Perhaps one of the best examples would be our main hero, character Guts, who, when we first meet him in the beginning of this manga, he basically looks like a villain. And there's various actions he takes in which he's performing very villainous acts. Um, but yet he is the hero of the story. And as Miura opens up and tells more of his backstory and more of the events, which is what's the Golden Age arc is, we see what brought Guts to the point that we first met him in the manga. And yet he continues to grow and to change even afterwards. And this is one of the ways where, like, oftentimes traditional fantasy, traditional art in that way depicts the hero in a very like one good looking light and stuff like that. And then here the hero is like, okay, anything but like a hero in terms of actions. But at the same time, is made to look not really made to look, I'm sorry, but more like as you read more about him and as he grows and evolves, he definitely does things a bit different than what one would expect. So how do you finish that without the man himself, unless he left big notes? The last time I heard something like this happening was, if I recall, Trinity Blood, which is another one where the creator had passed away before it was finished. And so the team that took over basically tried to follow in with whatever notes were left behind. But as I said, with so much material left to talk about, so many plot threads left open, how do you finish that? And how do you finish in a satisfying way? Or is it just, oh yeah, we finished Berserk, but there's a big old asterisk because Miura himself couldn't finish it himself? Or do we just end it now? Which might not be that bad of a thing because it was a nice cliffhanger at the end of 364. We gotta wait and see to find out. With the merger of Warner Brothers and Discovery, the talk has jumped around that of the return of the Snyderverse. The director's version of the DC animated DC live action movie verse has been a highly, let's just say, contentious, uh, talked about. Uh, any of those big words going on in terms of in the public eye, from massive fan campaign to try to bring it back, which helped lead to the introduction of the Justice League Snyder cut, the alternate cut for the Justice League movie, to basically just like now people want to see what happens next because of the already publicly known plans of two more sequels to Zack Snyder's Justice League. Do we really need the Snyderverse to return? I'm not gonna lie. For me, I really just don't give a flying fuck about the Snyderverse. I don't. Why do I not care? Because I didn't like the movies all that much. Man of Steel, I thought was actually okay. Some plot thread I thought were a little iffy, but I'm like, hey, if they followed up with it in the sequels, then maybe I would have felt better about it. Batman v Superman was a fucking atrocious, and even the extended cut was just like, it doesn't do enough to help this shit. And Justice League was hilarious, in the sense that Justice League was hilarious because I had the feeling, or I should say, I always felt that the movie was going to be good, better than the theatrical cut directed by Joss Whedon, just by default. Default is in the tone would actually match with the previous two films. And boy, was I right. But then there's also the fact that so the Snyder cut of Justice League is 4 hours long. It's like it's kind of hard to judge it. Then it now becomes a bit of apples and oranges because certain story plot points and stuff like that. It's like, if you had to deal with these plot points while having a like 2 hour, 2.5 hour, let's say time limit, how would this feel versus this 4 hour beast that you've gone and created? So it's kind of hilarious in that regard. So yeah, that's basically always been my view when it comes to the Snyder cut. Um, It's also very interesting for this to be happening, or for this discussion to even be coming up, considering the fact that, well, it's not really that well known, but apparently the rumor is that the reason why the Snyder Cut even existed was because Warner Brothers, specifically AT&T, wanted HBO Max to get a bit of a boost. The reason why they wanted a boost is because there was a lot of talk going on about, Disney Plus and like a little indie project uh, called The Mandalorian. Maybe you've heard of it. And so apparently AT&T wanted HBO Max to have their own little big story to put HBO Max on the map for various people. Um, and so it's very interesting how that sort of like helps to like feed in or feed on, or actually no, create a bit of symbiotic relationship between the people who wanted the Snyder Cut to be released so that Snyder can complete his vision, or at least that version of his vision, because the Justice League Snyder Cut is still not exactly the original vision that he had. But I mean, it's like it's gonna be kind of weird. It's kind of be kind of funky. Um, Warner Brothers Discovery, essentially, when the merger was starting to happen, it was beginning to happen. They mentioned they wanted more DC movies, and they wanted Superman to have more of a say, be more at the forefront of those movies. So it's gonna be very interesting to see what the priorities are and what it is they want to do. Would I want the Snyder Cut back? To be honest, I mean Snyderverse back. To be honest, no. I was just not feeling it. I'm not enjoying it. There's like, if you didn't like those movies, you would in the first two, I wasn't gonna like the Snyder Cut. And to be honest, the Snyder Cut is like there's parts of it. It's like It's like there's a difference between it being good because it had the 4 hours, and it being good because it was actually good. So for me personally, I'm like, you know what? I just don't give a shit. Can we just have some good DC movies, please, somewhere? And this is a Marvel guy saying that. Come on. Comixology is essentially the most well-known and the biggest app for purchasing, downloading, and reading digital comics. And of course, all good things must get thrown down the shitter, especially once a big corporation like Amazon gets their hands on it. A recent update via Amazon has basically rendered the app to have a lot more problems than it should be, and the question now becomes, where's Comixology, and perhaps more importantly, where do comic fans go from here? So let's go over real quick what it is that Amazon has done. Essentially, since Amazon took over Comixology, uh, we've had there's been some changes in that they have gone back and removed certain programs, they've changed certain programs, and then of course the fact that the Comixology was its own app, and instead they have decided to incorporate it into Amazon Kindle. And the problem is that it was basically nothing of use or value was seen from it. um, Essentially, like the best exact source I can give anybody for this particular story is to watch YouTuber NerdSync and his like 40 something minute video on the subject. I actually no, I'm sorry, I think it was like 49-minute video where he goes very in depth into several changes, not only the history of Comixology, but also the changes that Amazon has done. Essentially, what they've done is they've gotten rid of a couple of programs. Like for example, they've gotten rid of the ability for there was a nice little program in which people were allowed, if publishers permitted it, to download actual the copies of the comics they purchased. This was done because of the fact that there was a crash at Comixology, and people realized that, oh wait, these are all digital stuff, and if I have to go to the Comixology server to get to see the comics I paid money for, and there's a crash like this again, I'm shit out of luck, and all my money just went out the fucking window. But so this program, there was a program set up for people to be able to do that, and Amazon nixed that one. It's saying another problem goes for content creators. Many independent comic creators, before they would go talk to Comixology directly, and there's a program set up in which they would get 50-50 split of the revenue from the comics sold. That was, of course, thrown out by Amazon, and now you have to go through the Kindle program, which gives you a 65-35 deal, where Amazon gets 65% of the money that's made from your comic sales. On top of that, if you had issues of your independently created comic, on the system, you'd have to resubmit all your previous issues under the same 65/35 deal in order for your stuff to be accessible again. Because that's just how we do things now. So basically, we have a screen over of people now. Of people again. To be fair, though, when it comes to the publisher, I'm sorry, the downloading of actual copies of the comics you purchased, that is a bit of a twofold thing. Where again, certain publishers never allowed it, such as Marvel and DC. So it's not like you really gained anything from that one. But there were other issues and other publishers that did allow that. So the loss of that is definitely a pain in the ass because that means now when you're trying to read your comics, and if there's a crash or a shutdown, you're out of luck. And then of course screwing over of independent creators, which it's like, guys, like the chance, not all independent creators have the funds and resources to publish their own comic. What the fuck are you doing? So now these are like a little bit of the outside elements of the problem with Comixology under Amazon. The other thing is the fact that features and functionality of the app has gone down the shitter. There's basic features and basic functions that make it difficult for you to access your comics and to actually be able to enjoy the comics that you purchased. The search function is garbage. Even the iPad version is like the best version of the app. However, it's still filled with problems in terms of being able to use, in terms of ease of use and actual functionality, the ability to zoom in and how well you can zoom in. All these things are in the way of you being able to actually enjoy the comics that you pay money for. That's the kicker. You're paying money to read these comics on this app. Why is it so hard to use? Which brings up the problem of potential piracy. And oh my God, the flashback for that one right there. Hello. A little bit of a backstory. When we were running this show originally, we had 90% of the episodes involving how anime companies were trying to fight against piracy, yet were contributing factors to why piracy was liked. And here we are, a flashback once again, where again, you make something difficult to use, difficult to access. You make something that is hard to get your hands on legitimately. People are going to go to illegitimate, aka pirate ways of getting it, and yet you want to bitch. It's like Amazon, you're trying to save yourself a couple of bucks, and yet you seem to refuse to want people's money. How that makes sense? I don't know. I just don't know. Back in July 2021, EA, during the EA Direct event, announced the remake to the original Dead Space. The original Dead Space was quite a nice little shocker and came from a time when EA seemed to actually want to create good games and also original games. Not only was Dead Space created, but also the game Mirror's Edge. However, Dead Space unfortunately did not get a chance to last long as the series essentially tanked horribly with the coming of the third game. So, is it time to get excited for a new Dead Space? This is the one where I'm like really trying to gauge how I react to it because there's a part of me that just wants to yell and swear emphatically, like just purely without restraint or question. And that's because I just basically have to tell EA to go and fuck yourself with this announcement and the fact that this game is even existing. The reason why I say that is because once you go is when you tap into the history of the Dead Space series. For me, my personal history with the series is that I love the series, especially 1 and 2. I loved it because it was to me, it felt like it was what Resident Evil 5 and 6 should have been. Dead Space is a over-the-shoulder third-person horror game um, that has lots of inspirations for, like, example, Horizon, Alien, and various things. And essentially, it followed during the course of development. It began to follow the mechanics established by Resident Evil 4. And so, however, unlike Resident Evil 5, Dead Space took mechanics of Resident Evil 4 and actually went further into the horror aspect while also using the functionality of specifically targeting parts of an enemy's body for for better results. And what was created was a very fantastic horror game experience that I thought was just plain amazing. However, shit started to hit the fan almost right away when it comes to the series. James Stephanie Sterling had, in their post mortem, she commented that, or I should say, she revealed the story that when going to a press event in London, which was debuting Dead Space and talking about Dead Space to the press, that they had this massive franchise plans in motion. We're talking movies, comic books, uh, novels, the whole shebang. Like the way you see things like in Halo, Gears of War, and there's a couple other ones, and even talks of an actual live action Hollywood movie based on the franchise. And this was with the first game. Not only that, but again, this is a horror series. Horror isn't exactly the biggest genre. It's a popular genre. We all know that. Many of us here are horror fans. But let's face it, when it comes to, for example, horror in film, the thing that makes horror awesome is the fact that you can produce horror movies for cheap, and and then you get the profits coming from that. Whereas in a video game, if you're trying to go with this massive franchise plan, how much money are you pouring into this stuff from the get go? And then it all basically sort of reaches a boiling point with Dead Space 3. Dead Space 3 had a couple of problems which hit people really hard. First off was the introduction of co op, which so many times co op is like the thing that will basically destroy and kill horror for many folks. That's what it did for me with Resident Evil 5 and Resident Evil 6. Now, the thing is, though, is that the team Visceral Games, was developing the Dead Space games, they also had somebody, okay, fine, we got to do co-op. How about we do with a psychological thriller type of twist to it? Because ever since the first game, the main character's mental state and the things that they're going through as a result of all these horrible things that they're seeing was a big part, a big theme, I should say, with throughout the whole series. So that would be a cool thing to do. Nope. Apparently, the marketing department said no. You have to create a regular character to go in there, and so they created this random ass dude named Carver that no one can shit about, has no, likability, and it's like, oh hey, there you go, here you are. This is it. And then become the introduction of microtransactions, which Dead Space 3 was one of the first games of single player games that would bring in microtransactions into it. And that did not go over well. That was a huge public blunder right there, which helped to contribute to a very less than stellar sales numbers, which would have been insane anyway because EA basically said that a series like Dead Space has to sell like 5 million copies in order for it to be feasible to keep up. Welcome to the magical world of EA. The timer's gone off, but I really need to say this one last part very, very seriously because I want to make something very, very um, even though I am very sickened by EA and how that they're doing this remake, which they're doing only because Resident Evil 2 was successful. The fact that they basically sabotaged and just created a self-fulfilling prophecy of failure for Dead Space, the original Dead Space trilogy, especially Part 3, is sickening enough. But one highlight I want to give to this story goes with Motive, EA Motive, which is the studio that is actually developing this remake. They are the highlight of this series, of this story, I should say, because of the fact that they are trying to be communicative with the fans. And in fact, just 2 weeks ago, they put out a video showcasing changes to audio based on fan feedback for two of the weapons in the game. Try to give those new sound effects a little bit more closer touch to the original sound effects. If they keep up with this ability, wanting to communicate with the fans and take fans' feedback into account as they create this remake, then that is a really great thing to see. And I wish them all the luck. They are not responsible. They are not the problem. EA's executives have been and remain the problem. So EA Motive or Motive Studios, I hope you guys make a great game, and I wish you luck the whole way through. Raven Software had a bit of problems back in December 2021. Essentially, what happened was a series of layoffs were being announced at amongst the QA testers at Raven Software. Raven Software is a development team that has done a couple of things. Like, for example, I believe I remember them with some of the X-Men Legends games. So that era of like is it isometric? The top-down dungeon crawler type of games for the based on the X-Men, and then another one was Marvel Ultimate Alliance was another one. Um, but since then, they've basically been working on the Call of Duty games for Activision. And specifically, these guys, or actually, this team, is the team that's now in charge primarily as the main developers and the main people working on Call of Duty Warzone, Call of Duty's Battle Royale. So, this story is actually rather disgusting in various ways. One of the ways that it is disgusting is the fact that you had these devs, these testers, I'm sorry, QA testers, who apparently are like the man. I swear, these guys have got to be like the least liked part of the video game development because QA just seems to get no respect whatsoever. I remember, for example, CD Projekt Red and how the executive, when Cyberpunk 2077 came out, he basically threw the QA team under the bus, saying, "Oh, we didn't know about these problems, bitch. Do you have testers there for a reason? You really expect me to believe that you didn't know that there were the problems that were going to go on with 2077? You seriously telling me that? Like, no, fuck off." So what happened is that even Raven Software here, owned by one of the most profitable and biggest companies in video games, Activision Blizzard, was getting told that there were going to be layoffs happening. These layoffs were going to kick in by January 28th. Merry Christmas. But the series story gets even worse as there's an element of extra cruelty, not only tied to the fact that they were going to fire people, they basically fired people over Christmas, but tweets then started to come out from some journalists saying that people did not know if they were going to be fired because they did not do it all at once. They were basically were telling people in one-on-one meetings, and then the thing is though is that some people did not get the final word whether they're going to have a job next year or say the following year until the weekend had passed. So just picture going through an entire weekend of not knowing whether or not you will be able to have a job and be able to pay and help support your family. I really don't know what else needs to be said other than that when it comes to just seeing how horrible and terrible this situation is even handled, and the fact that it's even possible in the first place. Because we often think of layoffs happening when a studio or a developer or a publisher is having problems. But no, this is Activision Blizzard. They make shitloads of money. They have billions of dollars. They rake in $1 billion based on microtransactions alone and stuff like that. All kinds of statistics. This is reminiscent of the 2019 layoffs that were happening when they laid off about like 200 plus people, and yet it was the same year that they announced they had the highest level of revenue they've ever had in company history. And that's because it turns out that stockholders love layoffs because it means you're dropping down the costs, which means more profitability. And yet, this does basically goes almost unheard of. Now, one thing that's great about this story was the fact that the QA testers managed to actually form a union. And even though, unfortunately, as the headline of this particular story shows that Activision Blizzard was not going to voluntarily recognize the union, the fact that the union was actually formed and the union was going to go on ahead and submit itself for recognition by government entities. This is a huge plus. It's the second union formed in the video game industry, and we need more of it because we've had a series, as people probably will know, a series of really bad, terrible stories involving the treatment of workers in the video game industry. And so the chance for people to start unionizing and for that unionization to go ahead and put some work in is something that I would say is a fantastic thing and something that needs to be happening more and more. And I have some of the best assistants in the world because they want to be all over the show. There you go. Okay. Well, that's it for the topics that I have. Let's at least have set up for right now. So what I want to do, and we're almost running out of time for this show. What I want to do is hit some recommendations real quick. If you perhaps would like to listen to somebody besides me, but yet still maintain the same type of content, there are two places I recommend. First off is James Stephanie Sterling on YouTube under the YouTube channel named Jim Sterling. You also search for Jimquisition out there. Very awesome creator. Again, they've been one of my base source of inspiration in maintaining a pro consumer view of things, basically being willing to call out and to not just be blinded by fan love for a project, but to look underneath it and to realize and to basically admit and be honest about the bullshit that goes on behind the scenes of the things that we love and being able to actually like say that out loud. Another person I would also recommend is a similar vibe of content, Young Yeah, also on YouTube. Basically, you search Young Yeah on them. Again, both these creators are very good at being able to help you keep up to date, not only on stuff that they enjoy, but also being able to call out and to get like inside word and inside criticism of what's going on in the video game industry, and seeing basically the truth behind the hype train and the hype bullshit. Okay, so those are two that I would recommend the best, especially if you don't want to listen to someone like me. So we're going ahead. We'll open it up. Questions, answers, randomness, anything. Well, with what time we have left. Oh wow, nice, cool.
I want to watch you do this again.
Seriously?
I actually I really enjoyed the entire thing. I really really did.
Well,
Especially
thank
from
you.
the pro consumer point of things.
Well, thank you.
You're
Thank you
welcome.
for that. Well, my alarm went off. Basically, I don't know what time we have to stop and what time I have to let the next folks in because I had a timer set up for that.
I usually like to make sure we cut it around like five of.
Okay, okay, cool. In that case, we're going to go ahead and do that. So real quick, a bit. Anyone who's listening, anyone who's watching, or will hear this perhaps via Twitch or the outside afterwards. A big thank you to Real Women of Gaming for allowing me to do this. I haven't done it in a long time, so it's kind of nice to sort of like get back into it again. Big thank you all for coming on in and watching, or perhaps watching it via Twitter. Again, whether it's via Twitch or via Discord. Uh, I hope everyone has a good con. Thank you all. Take care. Be safe. Have a good day and good luck.